What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to Kingdom Animalia. It has been a while. Now, I am back. I hope to stay back. Let's just say life doesn't throw me lemons. It's been throwing me the entire fruit basket. It's been throwing vegetables as well, but that's not the important part of today's video. So, in today's video, I'm going to give you guys 5 reptiles slash amphibians. Not 5 of each, but 5 reptiles and amphibians combined that I would suggest you guys get for whether it be a first pet, for a friend, for whatever that may be. Given that the seasons are, well, the holidays are coming up, Christmas, but maybe you have a birthday coming up, anything of the sort. These are just some animals that I would suggest that you guys get because they make great beginners, whether it's for you or for someone else. So, let's get into the video. Alright, so I'm not putting anything in any sort of order or anything like that. I'm just going to put it out how it comes to mind. And so the first animal that I would suggest to you guys would be a leopard gecko. Why? Because they are a very hardy lizard. They make an easy beginner's gecko. They're terrestrial, so you can put them in an aquarium or cage or plastic bin or whatever you'd like that is longer rather than taller. Some people have a preference. They don't need any tall cages or anything like that, or aquariums or terrariums or bins, whatever you're using. They don't need it to be tall. They care more about floor space than they do height. So with them, you can put them in a 10-gallon, turn it on its side, or, well, no, this, depending on how you look at it, you can turn it on its side. But just a regular 10-gallon is fine. I actually lay down all of my tanks, and I customize them so that I can open them up from the front instead of opening them up from the top, which is why I said turn them on its side. But that's for another time. But you can put them in 10 gallons if you really wanted to. You could also put them in 20s. I put all 3 of my leopard geckos. They're all in 20 longs. Because leopard geckos are a very active lizard. So they like to have space. They do a lot of walking. They're very, very curious. So I would give them a 20-gallon if I were you. I wouldn't put them in a 10 unless they were like a baby or something. And then eventually I would move them up to a 20. But leopard geckos, they're very inexpensive to start off with. A leopard gecko can cost you, depending on where you get it from, $20-$30. That range can go way up to the thousands if anything, but I'm sure if you're buying your first leopard gecko, you don't want it to be $1,000 or anything higher than that. So they can be very inexpensive, $20, $30, $40, $50, somewhere in that price range. They're very affordable. To take care of them, their substrate is you have the option of choosing your substrate. Honestly, it can be a repta carpet. It could be paper towel. It can be Eco Earth or an Eco Earth mix. What else do people use? That's about it. People usually use things along those lines. If you do use repta carpet or paper towels or newspaper, that's another one. I would suggest that you provide them with a humidity hide. One of the common issues with leopard geckos is their shedding. Part of it is due to the humidity. A lot of people can't get the humidity right. Another issue would just be they just seem to be really bad shedders. I don't know. They have a hard time getting it off their fingers usually, or their toes rather. Excuse me. Off their toes rather, which it's understandable. They got little tiny toes and big heads, big mouths. It's huge. So actually, let me go get one of my leopard geckos. All right, this is AJ. This is my male leopard gecko. He he's how old is he? Probably like a year old now. He's about to shed, which is why he looks so ashy. I don't want to keep him in the light too long. But yes, so this is what a leopard gecko looks like. This is a male, so they're bigger than the females. I was saying something before I went and got him, but I forgot what I was saying. I think I was getting into their affordable and things like that, and they are. So AJ, when I first bought him, he was well. I don't remember how much he cost me, but he's also not your normal leopard gecko. He's a max node, Tremper albino, and all that. So he's one of those where you would pay extra money to be able to get them, as opposed to getting a normal. I do have two other leopard geckos in there that I will be able to show you. But yes, oh, I remember what I was saying now. The substrates. So, yeah, whatever substrate you put them on, I would suggest that you make sure they have some form of humidity, because they have like a humid hide. There we go. Because they have a lot of trouble shedding. Now AJ never really has some trouble shedding. When he does, he usually gets it stuck like on the top of his head somewhere. For him, the toes aren't uncommon, but they're not all that common. But he makes a pretty good example of a leopard gecko in my opinion. Yeah, so you just want to make sure that you have some kind of humidity hide for them, especially if you're not using Eco Earth or something. Eco Earth is very good at, Eco Earth mixtures are actually pretty good at holding in moisture. Eco Earth itself isn't too bad either. Other people use like sphagnum moss, they use cocoa husk, they mix them all together. Some people even mix in sand, things like that. So, yeah. So, whatever you put them on, I would just suggest having some form of a humidity hide, only to make sure that they do shed well. Because that's the biggest dilemma, I'd say, with leopard geckos. Another thing is their size. So, they stay pretty small for a lizard. There's plenty of other sizes. There's like bearded dragons. There's savanna monitors. Nobody's gonna get one, but Komodo dragons and things like that. So they're pretty big lizards, and the size of a leopard gecko may be convenient depending on who you are. So you may want a small lizard, and in that case, I say leopard geckos make a great pet. If you want a really large lizard, then leopard geckos aren't for you. But yes, so in reference to their care, 10 gallon, some form of a substrate, well, 20 gallon I'm going to say, because that's my suggestion. 20 gallons, some form of a substrate. I'll actually let them show there. Some form of a substrate. You're going to need a heating pad, not a heat lamp. You don't need a heat lamp. Leopard geckos are nocturnal. They're also not big fans of light. So I wouldn't suggest having like a heating lamp there. Some people use red bulbs and blue bulbs. If you're somewhere where it's always going to be like a room temperature, maybe slightly chilly at night, you don't really have to worry about that with leopard geckos. Like the red bulbs are supposed to be like night and day. I don't remember what color it goes with what, but one is for night, one is for daytime. You don't need a nighttime bulb for them. You don't need a daytime bulb because you shouldn't be using a bulb. What you really need is a heat bulb. A heating pad. When you get a heating pad, I always suggest to get a thermostat to control the heating pad. That way they don't get burned or anything of the sort. Yeah. So after that, you just want to have hides for them, food, water. Easy, really easy. You can take them out. Usually when you first get them, especially if they're a baby, they'll be a little skittish. They can be pretty fast when they want to be. But you don't really have to worry about them like biting you or anything like that. I've only ever been bitten when trying to pick off shed because they don't like it. If I sat there and I picked at your fingers, you'd want to tell me to get away too. So I mean, I feel like I'm just babbling, but I'm giving you guys as much information as possible to help you make your decision for what you would like to do. But yes, so those are my that's my number one. I was gonna say those are my top five. I gave you one lizard, but that's my first one. We're gonna go with leopard geckos. They are very easy to take care of, very calm, very relaxed. I'll make a care video. I'll make a setup video at some point, but I just wanted to make sure that I get that out just to let you guys know, what a leopard gecko is, what I suggest. I'll show you guys my other ones in another video. But yes, leopard geckos. So that's number one. Before we get into number two, I forgot to mention that leopard geckos eat worms. Well, they eat insects. I don't know if that's going to be a deterrent for anybody, but I felt like that was important to mention because some people, the sight of bugs, it just throws them off. No, you cannot feed them anything that's already dead. Dried out mealworms, dried out superworms, dried out grasshoppers, all of that is useless. It's a waste of your money. So yes, you have to feed them live. You can feed them mealworms, superworms, hornworms, earthworms if you really wanted to. They're not the biggest fans of earthworms in my experience, but you could try it. Pinkies on the occasion if they're an adult, not for babies. Definitely not for babies. Let's see, what do other people feed them? Waxworms, butterworms, silkworms, worms. Pretty much that's what they like to eat. So yes, I just felt like I would mention that before we get to number two because that's important. Alright, so for number two, I decided we were going to put ball pythons. Now, if you know what a ball python is supposed to look like, you will know this is not your typical ball python. This is my ball python Nezuko. The leopard gecko I did say his name was AJ. But yes. So this is my ball python Nezuko. Hi. So she is a pied ball python. I couldn't tell you all of the genetics given that I don't remember what they are, to be completely honest with you. I made a note of them, but she's like pied, yellow belly, orange dream, something. We're gonna stop there before I start spitting out things I don't remember. Spitting out false information rather. So these are ball pythons. She's not an adult. The ball pythons do get bigger than this. They get about, I'd say, between 3 and 5 feet, maybe 6, but I feel like that's a big stretch. Usually a ball python is going to be about 4 feet. Keep it safe, maybe like 4.5. But you get about 4 feet with the ball python. If it's 6 feet, that's a really big female. Ball pythons are sexually dimorphic, which means that the males look different from the females. What that mostly refers to in this case, though, is their size, because females are larger than the males. So, yes, the reason I say ball pythons make good beginner animals are because they're a very hardy snake species. They make a good beginner snake if you wanted a snake to get. They're good to start off with. They're good to even add on to your collection with. You can breed them later on. Same thing with really all the animals on this list. You can breed them later on if you really wanted to. But ball pythons are docile. I just say by nature. When you get them from anywhere, really, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be very, very calm. I could have never... When I first got her, she was exactly like this, and I had never worked with her before. They come out relaxed. I don't know what it is about them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 ball pythons, and I've worked with them over, not even these guys, I've worked with other ball pythons over the years, and I've never been bit, like, deliberately. I was bit by accident once, and that was during feeding, because I feed with my hands sometimes, so they kind of were looking, my hand smelled like rat, and, they have heat pits, so they kind of see with heat signatures per se, so one big rat-smelling thing, it just seems like food, so they bit me. It was one time, and that was it. Aside from that, yes, they are very, very relaxed lizards, very docile is the proper term. They're very curious, in my opinion. And here she goes, trying to disappear. Knocked off the cover to the bed. I think it was her at least. Yes, very relaxed lizards. Some people call them pet rocks, given that they don't do too much moving around. In this case, that kind of contradicts that, right? My goodness. In this case, that's a bit contradicting because you can see that she's moving for sure. But in a little bit, she would like relax. She would sit down, not sit down, but like just lay down and kind of stay there. Like over time, wherever she decides to stay, she'll be there a very, very long time without moving. A lot of times when I handle my other ones, they'll wrap themselves around my wrist or something like that and just kind of sit there. And that would be it. But I can see where they would get pet rocks from is basically what I'm trying to say to you. Yeah, so there's that. They are very, very calm. You're not likely to get bit or anything of the sort. Anything with a mouth can bite. That doesn't mean that it will, though. My goodness, this sheet is just not my friend. It's not important. But yes, so that aside, they're not too expensive when you're first starting up with them. If anything, the initial cost would be the worst of it. A ball python you can find for on sale maybe like $30. Not on sale, I'd say 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, something like that. Ball pythons can also go way up ahead of there. It can be in the 100,000s, 40,000, something like that. The price of them can go pretty high, but it's unlikely for you to find it's impossible for you to find a normal ball python for any $1,000. Why would you pay that for a normal? A normal ball python is usually gonna run you somewhere between 30 and maybe 150, depending on where you got it from. If you went to an expo, you can probably find one for 30, maybe 50. Some pet stores they'll do on sale. They'll put them on sale for like 30, 40, maybe $50. It's not hard to come across a ball python. Everyone has them. Yeah, and then to take care of them, you feed them once a week. She actually eats once every 2 weeks, and I might even extend that to once every 3 weeks because she eats large rats or medium rats, I think it is. So once they started eating rats, I put them on for once every 2 weeks. But I was feeding them mice once a week. Now that we're on that topic, they eat rodents. Don't try to feed them like other stuff. Like, I mean, some people will feed like livers and things like that. I guess you can do that, but what I meant by that is there are people who get these snakes and they'll try to feed them like worms, and that's just no. Don't try to feed them worms. People will also try to feed them fish. I wouldn't suggest it. They do best on rodents, okay? They do best on rodents. That's mice, that's rats. If you really felt like it, hamsters. That's when they're really big, I guess, like guinea pigs. I don't think anybody feeds them rabbits. I don't think they get big enough to eat an adult rabbit. I've fed them chicks in the past, only just to give them some variety, but they can make it their whole life eating mice and rats and calling it a day from there. When they're young, you can start them off on mice and then move on to rats, or you can start them off on rats and just keep it that way. It gets a bit hard to start them on mice and then transfer them over to rats for some people. I haven't had that issue, but some people do, so I just figured I would point that out. One negative about ball pythons are they do this thing where they like to fast. They'll go an extended period of time without eating. One of my ball pythons, Silky, actually, if you guys watched any of my past videos, she's fasting right now. She hasn't eaten in like a month. so she missed 2 feedings by choice, by her choice. I don't know what's up with that, but it's not uncommon for her to do that. It's not uncommon for any of them to do that. Nezuko is actually a really good eater. She's eating for me every time. I don't think she ever missed a meal, but that it's not an uncommon thing for ball pythons. Usually they'll fast every now and again. So there is that. When you're setting them up, it's basically the same substrates you would use for like a leopard gecko. You can use, excuse me, you can use newspaper, which is what I use. You can use paper towel. You can use Eco Earth. All the stuff that I named for a leopard gecko, you can use for a ball python. Same thing with them though. I would suggest you put some form of a humidity hide if you do use like newspaper or paper towel or something of that sort. It's not absolutely necessary, but especially if you keep them in like a glass enclosure, I would suggest it. I keep my ball pythons in plastic storage bins. It keeps my life easier, especially given that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 snakes total. So given that I have so many, it keeps my life easier to just have them in bins. You can have it in a bin if you only have one. It doesn't matter. It does to some people, but in my personal opinion, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. I actually think they do better in plastic bins than they do in glass terrariums. But that's an argument for another time. I can justify myself, and I'll make that argument another time, just not right now. Yeah. So, similar to the leopard geckos, you would want a heat pad, not a light. They don't need a lamp. They're nocturnal. They absorb heat through their bellies. They like belly heat. They don't like back heat. Is that, do people even call it back heat? They don't like heat from like a heat lamp. They would much prefer it from their bellies. Same thing. You want to get a thermostat when you get the heat pad and feed them once a week and you're all set. I mean, water. They need water, a consistent supply of fresh water, like every day. Same thing with the leopard geckos. Same thing with probably everything I put on this list. They need fresh water, but that's not a hard task. And feeding once a week definitely isn't a hard task. You just pick a day and feed them the rest of their life on that day if you want to. You could feed them every Monday. When they get bigger, the time extends. So once every other Monday. That's super simple. They poop like once a week. And if I use newspaper, so I take it all out, throw it away, replace it. Easy job. You can do a full clean like once a month if you really wanted to. Maybe once every 2 months because they don't make too much mess. They usually poop and that's it. That's usually it. But yeah, so very, very easy to take care of. Very, very calm, relaxed snakes. I think they make a very good first pet. So, boom, there you go. Ball pythons. I think I took less time explaining them than I did the leopard geckos. So on to number 3. Alright, so for the third snake, we're gonna choose corn snakes. Now, everybody might be like, oh, that's always what everybody chooses. And that's because corn snakes make a good pet. Now, I don't have any corn snakes. I've worked with corn snakes in the past, though. The closest I've gotten to a corn snake is my fox snake here. It looks exactly like a baby corn snake, but he's not. This is Simba, by the way. Corn snakes, they make a good suggestion. It's about the same as ball pythons, only I would say with corn snakes, they do much better with feeding. So if a ball python and that feed and response, if that scared you or was a deterrent for you, I'd say get a corn snake. Yeah, I definitely say get a corn snake because that's the biggest difference. Maybe the heat requirement, I'm not 100% to what a corn snake's heat requirement is going to be. It should be around the same as a ball python. I have my ball pythons at 90. I think I set the thermostat to. But yes, you want some form. That was actually not. I'm actually not being a good example right now. You're not supposed to touch your face when you're handling reptiles. So you guys don't do that. But my allergies are acting up. My goodness. All right. So that's not what we're here for, right? This is not. It's not about me. Please get out of my sleeve. Yes. So I would say corn snakes because they make a good snake to have much better feeding responses, and they're a lot more active than ball pythons. So this is also a good example of how active they are. They do nothing but move the whole time. I don't see corn snakes sit around very long. So yeah, I'm going to put on my glasses because that might deter me from rubbing my eye in the way that I was. My glasses are really dirty. Yeah, but corn snakes. There you go. All right. So for number 4, we're going to have the bearded dragon. This is a very, very common lizard species. Now, if you want something that's going to be more energetic than a leopard gecko, I would go with bearded dragons. Bearded dragons, we're going to take these back off because they're really dirty. Bearded dragons are harder to take care of than leopard geckos. They're diurnal, so anything that's diurnal, 9 times out of 10 is going to be harder to take care of than something that is nocturnal. Diurnal animals like to be out during the day. Nocturnal animals like to be out at night. Crepuscular animals like dusk and dawn. The fox snake I showed you is crepuscular. Yes. So anything that is diurnal instead of being nocturnal, it's going to be. Why are you like that? Anything diurnal and not nocturnal is going to be a little bit harder to take care of. I say that because they are the ones who need lights. So bearded dragons, they require a heat lamp. You need a UVB bulb. If you don't use UVB, you're gonna get a bump like this on their tail, and it can get worse. It can be on their feet. Excuse me. It can be on their backs. It can mess them up, and that's a disorder called MBD. That's metabolic bone disease. It's not very, yeah, disease, not disorder. Metabolic bone disorder. Metabolic bone disease. It's disease. Metabolic bone disease. Yes, I was trying to figure out if it was disease or disorder. It's disease. Yes. Anyway. So, with bearded dragons, you're going to want to have a UVB bulb, which I would suggest the tube instead of the bulb itself. He's attaching himself to my hair. And you're going to need a heat bulb. They need bigger enclosures as well, given that they get so big. This is a good example of a large bearded dragon. They get wider than this. His feeding day is actually tomorrow, so after I feed him tomorrow, he'll look a lot bigger. Yeah. So bearded dragons, they make very, very good pets. They're good. They're very social. They love attention. So if you want an animal that's actually going to seem like it wants to be around you, or a reptile that actually seems like it wants to be around you, I definitely suggest the bearded dragon. Like, I've had HP here get depressed when I don't play with him enough, or I don't take him out enough, or something of the sort. That's not uncommon. He really doesn't like it when I don't pay any mind to him. So, yes, but they're very communicative. They love to be around people, love to be pet or rubbed or just taken out of their enclosures, anything of the sort. They're a nice size to where even children will have a bit of trouble hurting them. Unlike, say, a leopard gecko. Leopard geckos are a bit smaller, so if you squeeze the wrong body part, it won't go too well. I could squeeze. I wouldn't, but I could squeeze a bearded dragon. For example, like, I could hold him up from his tail. I mean, nobody does that, but you can. Leopard geckos, I forgot to mention, if you pull them by the tail or grab their tail, it'll fall off. it falls off and it keeps wiggling. I wouldn't really want that. That'd be pretty traumatizing as a kid. But yeah, so beta dragons, the diurnal, you gotta have more space for them. They're not really something I would put on any sort of newspaper, paper towel, or anything like that. He's actually on tiles. I'll show you guys a video. If not in this video, I'll show you in one of the next ones. I put him on tiles. Some people use sand. I don't use sand because sand promotes impaction. And impaction is just not fun. It's reptiles constipation, and no, I don't have time for that. Yeah, so I would suggest using some form of tile or something like that. It's just an easy way to go about things, and it files down their nails, which, as you guys can see, can be incredibly long. Well, maybe not incredibly, but they can be kind of long, and you can cut their nails, not to the bottom like a lot of people think, just a little bit in front of the blood vessel. But yes, that is that. They eat the same stuff as the leopard geckos do. They eat a bunch of worms. They also eat fruits and vegetables. So, if you wanted to give them strawberries, blueberries, bananas, peppers, I don't suggest lettuce. I give them, what do you call it? What is that? Watercress, dandelion greens, sometimes kale greens, things along those lines. I also give him strawberries and bananas and blueberries and the other stuff that I named. But you can feed them those. They like both. In my experience, he likes fruits more than he does vegetables. Although he's supposed to have more vegetables than fruits. At a young age, I believe it is 80% worms and things like that, 20% vegetables. And then when they're older, it switches. It's supposed to be 20%, 20%, worms and insects. You can also feed them roaches. Same thing for the leopard geckos. You can feed them dubia roaches. But yeah, so it's supposed to be 20% insects and then 80% vegetables and fruits. But he hates eating fruits and vegetables. He doesn't. He won't eat them consistently. He'll eat any sort of a worm or insect that I give him. My allergies are ridiculous, but he will not eat any sort of focus. He will not consistently eat any sort of fruits or vegetables. He just doesn't want them all the time. But yeah, so there's beta dragons. I'll give you guys more in-depth videos, but this is already a pretty long video, so I don't want to, give you guys too much. So yes, beta dragons. Alright, and for the last but not least reptile we have on this list, I said reptiles and amphibians in the beginning, and I didn't put any amphibians. I just realized that. I'm going to give you guys a video of amphibian suggestions at some point. I just realized I didn't give you guys any amphibian suggestions. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry about that. But for my fifth reptile, we're going to go with the crested gecko. I guess so those reflexes. We're going to go with the crested gecko. Now, as you may know, this is an arboreal lizard. That is why he just jumped off of my hand. I don't even know if you guys could see when he jumped off of my hand, but he jumped off of my hand. Now, for a lot of people, anything that jumps is automatically scary. If that's the case, don't get a crested gecko. I'll tell you right now, don't get a crested gecko. They make very, very good first pets, but if something that jumps is going to scare you, don't get a crested gecko because they jump all the time. They're used to being in trees. They're an arboreal lizard. So in their enclosure, you're going to want something that has more height, more than it does floor space. Yes. Now, The reason that I put them on this list is because if you're one of those people who, excuse me, if you're one of those people who don't want to feed any sort of bugs or mice or anything of that nature, you can get a crested gecko because they keep your life pretty simple. They eat Pangea or Rapashi. Those are the top two brands, pretty much, Pangea and Rapashi. It's essentially like a powdered food. I can actually show you. And there we go again. This is Rapashi. I feed them both. I don't really choose. But in this very moment, I have Rapashi. It's a powder that you I don't even know if you guys can see it. It has a little clump in it, but I don't really know why. But there you go. It has a powder that you mix with water, and then you put it in a little container, put it in their enclosure or terrarium, and they'll lick it up and they call it a day. And you do that once every these allergies are crazy. You do that like once every 2 or 3 days. And then that's about the same you want to feed a leopard gecko. I'm used to just putting, I don't fill it up, but I put a bunch of mealworms in their feeding dishes, and then I just kind of make sure that there's always mealworms in there. But if you wanted to put them on a schedule, I'd say do once every like 2 or 3 days. So same thing for the crested geckos. Yeah, but they keep your life pretty simple. You just have to mix that together. So if you didn't want something that has to eat bugs, crested gecko is an easy way to go. Whew, that was a lot of words. I don't know when I took a breath. That was a lot of words. But yeah, so they are also another very docile lizard. Everything on this list is pretty docile. They don't give you too much trouble. I haven't had much trouble with bearded dragons. I haven't had much trouble with crested geckos. He had a bit of stuck shit on his toenail. Not even on his toe, on his toenail. But yes, crested gecko. He's a wee bit skinnier than I would like. They do get a bit thicker than this. The reason he's skinny is because I feed him both insects and Pangea / Rapashi, whichever one you pick. Because I feed him both, he's developed a preference towards insects, especially given that it's the colder seasons is winter. So it's not uncommon for wild crested geckos, not captive ones, to switch over to eating bugs, because in New Caledonia, where they're from, there will be no rotting fruit, because that's really what Rapashi and Pangea is supposed to mimic. It's supposed to mimic rotting fruit, because in the wild they'll go and they'll lick rotting fruit, whether that be like an apple or a peach or whatever's in New Caledonia. They like fruit. They look up fruit. And so that's what it's supposed to replicate. Now, one cool thing, or it's cool in my opinion, if you may have just seen them do it, I don't know if you did, they lick their eyeballs because they don't have any eyelids. So their eyes are always open. Some people call them the eyelash gecko because they have little eyelashes. But yes, they lick their eyeballs. I think that's pretty cool. I also like the fact that they jump and they are super, super soft. Yes. So there's that. You don't have to give them any sort of a light or a heating pad. If the temperatures drop too low at night, like say like it's low 60s or something like that, I would say then maybe get like some form of a night bulb, only to make sure that they're keeping warm. But they're usually fine at room temperature. So you don't need any sort of like heat or lights or anything like that for them. They're very, very easy to care for, very, very handleable. Anything is handleable with time, if you ask me, but they start off pretty handleable. If anything, they can be a bit skittish, and in the case with these guys, that means that they can jump around and run away and things like that. One thing to mention, because I forgot to mention it with the leopard geckos until later in the video, they are capable of dropping their tails. I've learned in my experience, most crested geckos that keep their tail their whole lives have like some form of floppy tail syndrome, and that's basically like the muscle. That's basically like the muscle in their tail. It's not as strong over time. So if they're like upside down, their tail, you're not gonna do it. Okay. Their tail, it kind of like flops like backwards or to the side in a way. I don't really know how to explain it to you, but yes, um, that's floppy tail. It's not anything of detriment to them. It's just something to note. But that's not even in all adult crested geckos. It's just in some adults. Yeah, but a lot of crested geckos don't make it to their adulthood with their tails. Some people call them frog butts, but they drop it. It shakes away and then it falls off, never grows back again. The leopard gecko's tail does grow back over time, but a crested gecko's tail never grows back. And that's not anything like regarding that. It doesn't have to be your fault. In the wild, they can drop their tail over the sound of like thunder. So it's a defense mechanism, but it's a whack defense mechanism if you're gonna throw it away over some thunder. But it is what it is. They have prehensile tails, so kind of like monkeys, they can dangle from their tails, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so that's my fifth suggestion. At some point, I will give you guys more information on all of them and things like that. But to keep this video as short as it can be now, given that it's probably going to be like a half hour long or longer, that's where we're going to stop. So yes, crested geckos. He actually doesn't want to be in my hair today. So we're going to end the video there. If you made it this far, thank you for watching, because I know I did a lot of talking. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or text me on Instagram and I'll be able to answer. Over time, I will be doing setup videos to let you guys know how I set everything up, and even care videos to let you guys know the same. Yes. That is it. That is it for today. Thank you guys. And Twix is obviously tired of me and you. So, have a good night, y'all.